Well, congrats, you're in the race, you're a first-time candidate for Congress, now you need to file with the FEC. So this video is about how to file your initial paperwork with the FEC if you're running for US Senate or US Congress. I thought about doing a video to go over state stuff, but all the states are different, but the mechanics are basically the same. So if you understand this process, you'll understand how to do the exact same thing for your state. One of the first questions I get from a political candidate, besides is this bad thing I did going to stop me from getting elected, is how do we file these FEC reports? Because it seems overly complicated, and it's really not. It's gotten way easier, not because the process is easier now than it was the first time I did it years and years ago, but because the FEC's actually gotten better at having hotlines and emails where you can call and ask questions or send an email and get responses, like before the election is over, like in the past. So I've really appreciated that the FEC has geared up their staff to make it a lot easier for you to do. So most first-time candidates and even long-time candidates oftentimes just use a spouse or a friend to do their campaign finance and don't necessarily hire a professional to do it because hiring a pro to handle all this is ridiculously expensive, prohibitively expensive, I think, for a first-time candidate, and you're better off doing something this simple on your own. So the first question we have to answer is, when do you file? Now, you legally are only required to file after you've raised $5,000 for your campaign, and that's when you're required to file your paperwork. If, however, you're serious about running, I highly recommend you just file it before you really get started. Once you've contacted your donors and talked to your friends to make sure that they're willing to donate to your campaign, and you've got some folks who are going to take a financial interest in your race, then you're ready to actually have them put it into an account, and that starts by setting up your bank account. So to set up your bank account, you'll just need your tax ID and your statement of organization forms. That's usually all the larger banks require. Just keep in mind that smaller banks or credit unions are oftentimes unfamiliar with federal campaign committees, and sometimes it can be a bit of a drag as they look at stuff and try to figure out how to set up your account. First, you want Form 1 and Form 2 are the two forms that you need. One is a statement of organization and the other is a statement of candidacy. You can file a statement of candidacy, but don't need to file a statement of organization for 15 more days, something like that. I highly recommend you just file these together. Your statement of organization will have your designation of treasurer, which I recommend to be a friend or someone that you trust who will handle this. Being the treasurer also means that they are legally responsible for all the reporting and correct reporting that goes on throughout the campaign. Having a treasurer who's easily available, can write checks or pay for things, is going to make things a lot easier. So when you're thinking of a treasurer, you don't want it to be somebody that you have to call that won't get back to you for 2 weeks. You need somebody who can write a check now or who can go to a website and pay for this and pay for that. It makes things a lot easier. It also helps if you have a large campaign that's going to hire staff, if you have someone who's going to be able to handle the payroll side of it on time, promptly. This is very important. I'd say about half the congressional campaigns I've worked with have had trouble getting their treasurer to actually pay people on time. It's a ridiculous problem, and it's very easy to solve by having somebody responsible that cares about the campaign making sure things are done on time. If you don't have things paid for on time, your yard signs will be late, your digital media will be late, your mail will be late, everything will be late. That's why it's so important you have someone you can count on and trust, and also why I think a lot of first-time candidates just use their spouse as their person who's their designated treasurer, because you've got someone there you can trust who will make sure things are done good, properly, and on time. Your statement of candidacy and your statement of organization are actually very simple forms. You can go to the FEC website. They're 1 or 2 pages. They're very short and the questions are very direct. Another question I get from candidates is what address to put on the filings. I recommend getting a P.O. box initially, but anytime I've worked with a campaign, I've never had crazy left-wing protesters show up and start boycotting, show up at the person's house or burn it down or something crazy. I'm not really too worried. That's not a scenario we need to be overly worried about. And so if somebody uses their personal office or something like that, for the mail and whatnot, that's not too crazy of an idea. Once you file these papers, you're going to need to go to the IRS website and get a federal tax ID number. The federal tax ID number is what you're going to need along with your Form 1 and Form 2, along with your federal tax ID PDF with you to the bank to open the account. It's very important when you're on the IRS website that you have them email you your tax ID form. You'll get it within 5 minutes and you can print it up and take it to the bank. If you just want them to mail it to you, you'll get it eventually. And that causes everything else to slow down. So make sure that you check that box so that they'll email that to you right away. Now that you, your treasurer, have your campaign account open, you can start raising money. You just need to think about 2 different ways people can donate to your campaign. They can give you cash donations, literal cash, up to $100, up to $50 if they want to be anonymous, and after $200, they have to give you their profession and what they do for a living. That'll need to go on the form, and you need to make your best effort to retrieve it if they don't tell you. Usually they're going to tell you what they do, but a lot of times people leave it blank, and you just need to make sure you send them a letter or an email and have a record that you attempted to retrieve that information. In-kind donations are basically anything that's not cash. If someone donates an office or a chair or something to your campaign, then that counts as an in-kind contribution. When someone gives you something, you just need to take note of its monetary value and make sure that you record it as a donation on your FEC filing. Because Bitcoin has become more popular, it is seen more like an in-kind donation than a cash donation, but you'll still report it at the value of the Bitcoin at the time. Now, this is something that's new for me, so what I just said is all I know about it, but I'll dig into it and maybe make another video on that in the future. Campaign contribution limits are set in theory to stop people from just buying our politicians. We all know that doesn't really work, but we're still stuck with these laws that are ineffective. This means that individual donations can only come in at $2,900 per individual, per cycle. Now I highlight per cycle because if they give you $2,900 in the primary, they then can give you $2,900 for the general election. So you want to make sure you keep track of those donors because you can go right back to them. You can also loan your money as an individual, as much money as you want. You can directly donate it to the campaign without limit, or you can loan it and pay yourself back later. While individuals are limited to $2,900, political action committees or PACs have a $5,000 limit. They actually should have probably raised it by now. But anyway, your political action committees will be able to donate $5,000 in cash to you directly to the campaign. You can also count on them to do mailing on their own, and this is considered an independent expenditure, and you don't have to report that. As a political candidate, if you're going to be in a district and there's a good chance of you winning, these kinds of independent expenditures are normal. I'm sure you've seen them in your mailbox. You get a mailing from that looks like it endorses a political candidate, and then you see the Organization for Helping Super Republicans Win PAC, right? So that's what these political action committees do. Now, you're not allowed to coordinate with a political action committee or direct their funding. There's always a tendency for campaigns to say, I wish they'd do a mailing about this issue instead of this issue. Do not call them. That is against the law. You cannot coordinate with them, or it's not an independent expenditure, and then it's subject to campaign finance laws. Other political candidates can give you up to $2,000, which is kind of cool, especially if after the primary it was a big race. Some of those other campaigns, if they're team players, can offer a donation to the winning campaign that finished up the primary, and that little cash can really help get you going for the general election. And it's not something you should shy away from asking for. The actual toil of doing these campaign finance reports comes at trying to use the FEC Files software. Once you get the hang of it, it's really not that hard. It just sometimes becomes frustrating because using the software has a bit of a learning curve that is challenging and frustrating. The few times I've used it, I've wanted to scream, but I did manage to control myself to only eating chocolate and crying on the floor. The nice thing is now, the last time I needed to do an FEC report or was involved in helping a campaign on this directly, I was able to call and they walked me through in 2 minutes what I needed. And that was just amazing. So you want to try to get your questions about how to use the software out early. And unfortunately, it only works on Windows. I'm a Linux guy. That's really frustrating for me, but That's the way it goes. So once you've gone through these initial steps and you've got yourself ready to file, everything's going great, you don't really have much to worry about. Just make sure you pay attention to the filing deadlines, because sometimes they'll come up fast and unexpected. So once you got them on the calendar, you're gonna be okay, and don't be nervous about it. You can call the FEC. They have a great website with a lot of tutorials that'll walk you through how to do a lot of this stuff. I found those tutorials not to answer all my questions, so I still ended up having to call them. But luckily, I was able to get through to somebody and they were able to answer my questions quickly. So this is just another one of those aspects of the campaign that you can get through in baby steps. Something you want to be careful of is once you do file, a lot of organizations are going to try to send you emails to get you to pay them to do these things. This is simple. It has a learning curve, but you can do it. And some of these organizations sending out these emails are kind of shady and want to charge you crazy amounts of money. I recommend you make sure you have somebody that you trust to handle it. That way you'll save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of time. There are companies that also try to sell you software that focuses on doing FEC filing. You really need to learn to use the FEC filing software. Once you learn it, you've got it, and then you don't have to deal with a bunch of other things. And so it's really important that you get this down and you have somebody you trust that can handle it. Congratulations on your decision to run for office. This is really exciting, and good luck on filing these reports.